Imagine that for centuries there were hidden messages, veiled teachings and profound words that never reached the ears of the general public. Words that came from Jesus, but were not accepted by the official structure of the church, because his power was so immense that he could free people from any external dependence. Now think about this. What would happen if you discovered that Jesus taught not only to love and forgive, but also to awaken a hidden power in your own mind, a power that could radically transform the way you understand life, faith, and the universe? Today we are going to dive into this mystery forbidden for centuries, and what you are going to hear can change everything. I assure you, the most revealing will be at the end, and that last teaching is the most powerful of all. Before moving forward, I invite you to subscribe to this channel, leave your like, comment your impressions, and share this video with those who also seek the truth. What we will reveal together here is not just information. It is a spark capable of lighting a fire of inner transformation. Stay until the end, because each part of this message will be a key that opens a deeper door to hidden wisdom. But the last will be the most decisive and transformative. Throughout history, the church has canonized certain texts and silenced others. The so-called apocryphal Gospels, the Gnostic writings and manuscripts found in places like Nag Hammadi, contain fragments of a broader knowledge. In these texts, Jesus appears not only as the teacher of love and compassion, but as a guide who teaches human beings to discover the true temple within oneself. The mind and spirit, in direct communion with the divine, did not depend on intermediaries or stone temples or hierarchies. It was a dangerous knowledge for institutions because it directly empowered the individual. Let us think for a moment about what it means when Jesus said, "The kingdom of God is within you." This statement is recorded in the Gospel of Luke and reinforced in Gnostic texts like the Gospel of Thomas. It is much more than a poetic metaphor. It is a radical call to look within and discover that access to the divine does not depend on external dogmas, but on the activation of one's own consciousness. The mind in this context is not a simple biological organ. It is the point of connection with the eternal. The philosopher William James, considered the father of modern psychology, said that the greatest revolution of our generation is the discovery that human beings, by changing the internal attitudes of their minds, can change the external aspects of their lives. Now think, wasn't Jesus teaching something similar 2 millennia ago? That by transforming your inner vision, you also transform your reality. Imagine Jesus sitting with his closest disciples, not in crowded squares, but in intimate gatherings, revealing that every thought is a seed and that faith is the energy that makes it blossom. If you can believe it within, you can manifest it on the outside. This is something that also resonates with the Hermetic texts that stated, "Everything is mind, the universe is mental." It is not surprising the coincidence between traditions, apparently so different. And here is the big question for you. How many times have you underestimated the power of your own mind? How many times have you believed that the change had to come from outside institutions, of authorities, of rituals, when in reality Jesus was pointing to the key that you already carry inside? Throughout this first part, what I want to be clear is that Jesus taught something that went beyond the morality or the miracles he taught. The inner awakening. That is why many of his messages were considered uncomfortable, not because they were false, but because they empowered the common human being. The fathers of the church selected what was convenient to maintain order, but much remained hidden in hidden manuscripts, buried in caves, forgotten in forbidden libraries. The Gospel of Thomas, for example, includes phrases attributed to Jesus that do not appear in the official Gospels. One of them says, "If you bring out what is within you, what you bring out will save you. If you do not bring it out, what you do not remove will destroy you." Think about it for a moment. He is not talking here about the inner power, the power of the mind and the spirit. This teaching was silenced because it questioned the need for external control. Now, why was it so dangerous for the church to recognize this? Because if the kingdom of God is within you, then you are sovereign over your relationship with the divine. You do not need mediators. Someone who understands this stops being manipulated by fear or guilt and regains their inner freedom, and with it an immeasurable power. Scholar Elaine Pagels, specialist in Gnosticism, explained that the Gnostic Gospels present a Jesus who trusts that each individual can have direct access to spiritual knowledge. It is not about blind obedience, but about consciously awakening. This idea clashes directly with the concept of a church as the sole guardian of the truth. What we see here is that Jesus' hidden teachings on the power of the mind were not simple speculations. Philosophical, they were tools of liberation. They taught that what you think, what you believe, and what you cultivate within yourself shapes your experience of the world. The mind is not the enemy of the spirit, but its vehicle of manifestation. And I want you to think about this to close this. First part, what would happen if you began to treat your mind like a sacred temple, like the true altar where the divine dwells? How would your life change if you understood that each thought can bring you closer or further away from your spiritual fullness? Stay with me, because in the next part, let's delve into how these teachings prohibited by the church connect with universal principles that have been transmitted in Hermetic, Gnostic, and mystical traditions throughout the centuries. And there you will discover why the mind is not just an instrument, but the master key to open the door to the inner kingdom. Imagine for a moment that everything you perceive in the outside world is just a reflection of what happens inside you. The wise men of ancient times repeated it over and over again. As above, so below as within. So without, this Hermetic maxim finds an echo in the words of Jesus when he said that the kingdom of heaven was not a distant place, but a reality present and accessible from within the human being. But what exactly does it mean that the mind has a creative power? And most importantly, why was this teaching considered so dangerous that it was hidden for centuries? If we look at the manuscripts found in Nag Hammadi, we find a radically different vision of Jesus. He was not only the Messiah who redeemed through sacrifice, but the teacher who invited each person to become a living Christ. The church could not accept that perspective because it diluted the need for a rigid hierarchy. Instead of needing temples and priests as the only mediators, Jesus was saying that every human mind could be a living temple where God dwelt fully. You can see how revolutionary this message was. The psychologist Carl Gustav Jung analyzed the symbolism of these texts and explained that the inner Christ is a metaphor for the process of individuation, the awakening of the being to its totality. For Jung, the Gnostic Gospels were testimonies of a deep psychic process in which the human being had to confront his shadow, integrate his consciousness, and discover in himself the divine spark. This connects directly with the idea that the mind is not just a space of scattered thoughts, but a sacred field where the union with the eternal can manifest itself. Jesus knew that beliefs are powerful forces. When I said if you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you would say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it would move, I was not talking about an external magical act, but about the inner power of the mind and the faith to transform realities. The metaphor of the mountain symbolizes that which seems impossible, that which human reason cannot conceive. But with a focused mind and true faith, limits disappear. Think for a moment how many times in your life you have repeated negative thoughts full of fear and doubt. What results have they brought you? Now imagine what would happen if instead of sowing fear, you sowed certainty, gratitude, and a clear vision of what you wish to experience. This is exactly what Jesus taught in his parables. Although many times we interpret it only from a moral level and not from its deeper spiritual dimension. The Gospel of Philip, another Gnostic text, states that the truth did not come to the world naked, but in symbols and images. This means that the teachings of Jesus were not simple instructions, but spiritual codes. Each parable contained a deep level of wisdom waiting to be deciphered by those who were ready. On the surface, it spoke of sowers, of seeds, of vines and fishermen. In the depths, it spoke of the mind, of consciousness, and the ability to co-create with the divine. Now, I want to ask you something directly. You who are watching this video, are you willing to see beyond the surface? Are you ready to accept that the true miracle happens inside your mind before manifesting in the external world? Leave your answer in the comments, because this reflection can open a deep dialogue between those who are ready to awaken. Many scholars have recognized that religious institutions could not allow the free circulation of this type of teachings if people discovered that the power of the mind is direct access to the divine, then control through fear and sin would lose strength. Faith would no longer depend on obeying but on awakening. Control would be replaced by inner freedom, and that was too great a risk for the power of the religious authorities. The philosopher and mystic Aldous Huxley spoke of the perennial knowledge, that eternal wisdom that appears in all spiritual traditions, from the Hindu Upanishads to the Gnostic Gospels, and in all those traditions there is the same core. The mind is the bridge between the human and the divine. Jesus in his time revealed this in such a clear way that it could not be ignored, but it could be censored. In this second part, I want you to understand that the power of the mind, it is not a modern fantasy nor an invention of self-help currents. It is an ancestral knowledge confirmed by the oldest writings, and that Jesus himself taught. The problem is that it became a knowledge reserved for a few because the masses should not have access to that inner freedom. Remember this: when Jesus spoke of the eyes that see and the ears that hear, he was not referring to physical sight and hearing. He was talking about inner perception, the ability to open the mind and heart to understand hidden symbols. In his words, those who had that openness received the true teaching. The others heard only pretty stories. So what does it mean today to rescue those hidden teachings? It means to recognize that your mind is a divine tool. It means that you are not a victim of circumstances, but a co-creator of your reality. This is not just an inspirational speech. It is the teaching that Jesus shared with his closest disciples. That is why the call to secret knowledge appears many times in the apocryphal Gospels, or to the mysteries of the kingdom. In the next part, we are going to go even deeper. We will see how these teachings relate to universal spiritual principles that not only transform your inner life, but also have a direct impact on the material reality that you experience every day. There, you will understand why the last teaching that we will reveal is the most powerful of all, because it unites the spiritual and the mental in a single truth that can revolutionize your existence. Imagine that. Everything you live, each encounter, every challenge and every experience is not a matter of chance, but the result of a constant interaction between your mind and reality. Jesus understood this truth and expressed it in his parables and occult teachings. He did not only speak of a kingdom in the future, but of a present kingdom that you could access here and now if you learn to direct your conscience. But what does this mean? In practical terms, it means that the power of your mind is the instrument with which you shape your destiny. The Gnostic texts were banned by the church for centuries. They insist that true knowledge does not consist in repeating dogmas, but in awakening to the inner light. The Gospel of Thomas includes a surprising phrase: "The kingdom is extended over the earth, but men do not see it." What does this mean? That the kingdom is not a distant place, but a dimension of consciousness that you can access by transforming your way of thinking and perceiving. Jesus knew that the mind is like a filter. Depending on what you cultivate in it, you will perceive a world of darkness or a world of light. The researcher Rudolf Steiner, founder of anthroposophy, stated that Jesus' mission was not only moral, but also cognitive, to awaken the human being to a new state of consciousness. Steiner explained that the parables were symbolic keys designed to activate deeper levels of thought. If we accept this, then each word of Jesus acquires a distinct value. It is no longer just ethical advice. but a tool to expand the mind and connect it with the divine. Now think about prayer, the religious tradition. Many times it has been reduced to a repetitive ritual, to a constant supplication. However, Jesus taught something much deeper. In the Gospel of Matthew, he says, "When you pray, believe that you have received, and it will be yours." This instruction is extraordinary because it reveals that true prayer is not asking, but affirming with certainty that what is desired already exists in the mind and in the spirit. It is an act of mental creation. You can see the magnitude of this teaching. Prayer is not begging, it is activating the creative power of your conscience. Let's think about another fundamental aspect, the mind. As a fertile field, Jesus constantly used the image of the seed. He said that a mustard seed, the smallest of all, could grow and become a large tree. On the surface, it seems like a lesson about faith, but deep down, it is a teaching about the mind. Each thought is a seed that, when watered with faith and conviction, grows until it manifests in reality. Thoughts of fear produce fruits of fear. Thoughts of love produce fruits of love. Here a crucial question arises for you. What seeds are you sowing in your mind every day? Are you aware that your internal dialogue may be creating invisible chains or, on the contrary, doors to your liberation? This is a powerful reflection that I invite you to share in the comments, because by expressing it, you not only reflect but also inspire other seekers to look within. The fathers of the church feared that these ideas would spread because a person aware of their inner power no longer needs intermediaries. That is why many of these texts were classified as heretical. But what does elegy really mean? Etymologically, it comes from the Greek airesis, which means choice. A heretic was not necessarily an enemy of the truth, but rather someone who chose to think differently, and thinking differently, when it comes to the power of the mind, was an act of spiritual emancipation. The philosopher Baruch Spinoza claimed that freedom does not consist in choosing what you want, but in understanding why you want what you choose. This idea perfectly reflects what Jesus taught his disciples. Closer to understanding the mind is to understand the origin of desires, emotions, and decisions. Without that knowledge, we are slaves to automatic thoughts. With that knowledge, we become free. By connecting the teachings of Jesus with Hermetic principles, we discover a surprising coherence. The first Hermetic principle says, everything is mind, the universe is mental. What else did Jesus affirm when he said that what you believe in your heart will manifest in your life? The mind is the stage where reality is created, and to understand it is to understand the mystery of the kingdom. But here comes something even deeper. Jesus did not only teach to think, but to feel. The mind is not only rationality, it is also the heart, the emotion, the living. Faith in the official Gospels, he says, love your neighbor as yourself. If we analyze it from this perspective, we discover that he does not only speak of compassion, but of a state of consciousness in which the vibration of love transforms the mind and consequently transforms the world. I want you to stop for a moment on this idea. If the kingdom of God is within you, and if your mind is the temple where the divine dwells, then every thought, every emotion, and every word you speak are sacred acts. Have you ever thought about the responsibility and at the same time the privilege that this implies? Some modern scholars like Deepak Chopra have taken up this vision to show that spirituality and the science of mind are not separate. Chopra explains that consciousness is not a byproduct of the brain, but the basis of all reality. This resonates directly with what Jesus taught, that the invisible, the interior, the spiritual precedes the visible. In this third part, we have seen how Jesus' hidden teachings on the power of the mind relate to prayer, to the seeds of thought, to the awakening of consciousness, and to the union of love and mind as one creative power. All of this prepares us for the final revelation that we will explore in the next part. The most powerful and forbidden teaching of all is that which unites the mystery of the inner kingdom with the true nature of the human being. Stay until the end, because there you will discover why this knowledge was silenced and why, when you understand it, nothing in your life will ever be the same. You will be like gods. These words that appear in Genesis as a warning were reinterpreted in many Gnostic and esoteric texts as a promise, and here we come to the deepest and most forbidden teaching of all, those that Jesus transmitted to his disciples, that the true power of the human mind is a reflection of divine power, not because the human being is a separate God, but because he carries within himself the spark of the whole. This was the truth that the institutions could not allow to spread, because it brought down every structure of control. Jesus said, "You are the light of the world." He did not say that one day you would be, nor that you would only be if you fulfilled a list of rules. He said it as a present certainty. Every human being has within himself the capacity to illuminate, to awaken, to manifest the kingdom. This implies something immense. Access to the divine does not depend on mediators, but of your own consciousness. Your mind is the channel through which divinity expresses itself. The last and most powerful teaching of Jesus about the power of the mind is that we are not simple spectators of the universe. We are co-creators with it. When he said, "The works that I do, you will also do, and greater works than these," he was revealing that the same energy that flowed in him flows in all of us. This phrase, recorded in the Gospel of John, is so radical that even today it is difficult to accept how it is possible that Jesus said that we can do the same thing that he did. The answer lies in the understanding that Christ is not an exclusive individual, but a state of consciousness to which we are all called to awaken. The religious historian Mircea Eliade explained that in all mystical traditions there exists the concept of the divinized man, the one who, by awakening his mind and spirit, fully participates in the sacred. In this sense, Jesus embodied this model to show humanity what each one of us can become. This was the most dangerous teaching, not the worship of a man, but the activation of the inner Christ in each person. Now think about the following. What would happen if millions of people understood that they do not need to live with fear, guilt, or dependence because they carry within themselves the same force that sustained Jesus? What would happen if each mind recognized itself as a living temple, capable of creating healing and transforming the world? Would change radically. That is why these teachings were hidden, because a people free internally cannot be dominated externally. The Gospel of Mary Magdalene, another silenced text, contains a dialogue where she states that the Son of Man is within you. This testimony, relegated for centuries, confirms that Jesus transmitted to his closest disciples the idea that Christ was not outside but inside, and Mary, as a privileged disciple, understood this clearly. However, her voice was marginalized to maintain a discourse that favored institutional power. The philosopher Teilhard de Chardin, Jesuit and paleontologist, said that we are not human beings living a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings living a human experience. This phrase accurately reflects the core of Jesus' hidden teachings. When our mind awakens, it reveals to us that we have always been more than matter. We have always been an expression of the divine. Here is the promise I made at the beginning, to reveal the most powerful teaching of all. And this is it. The kingdom of God is not just a place, nor just a state of inner peace. The kingdom is your own consciousness. When you awaken the Christ within, when you understand that the mind, the heart, and the spirit united are the true key to manifest the eternal in the everyday. This is the great spiritual revolution that Jesus taught, and that was prohibited because it empowers each person without the need for institutions or external dogmas. Ask yourself now what it means to you to know that Jesus' words pointed to the greatness that already lives within you. What will you do with this knowledge? Will you continue waiting for external salvation, or will you assume the responsibility of awakening your inner power? Boss never used 51 BCE 0C785 CA2F6808. Modern science is even beginning to confirm what these teachings had already announced. Quantum physics has shown that consciousness influences observable reality, that the observer modifies what is observed. This is not an echo of the spiritual principle that Jesus taught, that what you believe in your mind and in your heart ends up manifesting in your life. The border between science and spirituality begins to fade, and there we discover that Jesus' words were much more visionary than we ever imagined. So we come to the end of this journey. We have explored the hidden teachings of Jesus about the power of the mind, those that were banned by the church because they challenge control and awaken inner freedom. We have seen how his words resonate with Hermetic and philosophical Gnostic traditions, and how even today they remain an invitation to personal transformation. Always remember, the light is not outside, it is within you. The kingdom is not found in temples of stone, but in the consciousness that you decide to cultivate each day, and the mind. When it is illuminated with faith, love, and certainty, it becomes the place where the divine is revealed. If this message resonated with you, subscribe to the channel, share this video with those you know who seek the truth, and leave your comment so that together we can create a community of awakened seekers, because the time has come to recover what was hidden, to awaken the divine spark that Jesus came to ignite in each one of us, the last and greatest. Truth is this: you are not separate from God. You and the divine are one. Your mind is the door, your heart is the key, and your spirit is the temple where the kingdom already dwells. Thank you for watching.